I remember that my father traveled to the United States in the early 30s to sell his products overseas. He had started manufacturing just a few years before, and by 1930 he had managed to export some 100 chainsaws to the United States. Quite often, he was his best and only salesman when traveling with a few chainsaws in his luggage from New York across the continent and up to Canada into the center of the timber industry. During those trips and after selling all the saws he brought along, he quite often had to borrow one back in order to make demonstrations to other potential customers. His ability to convince was great, and it was not at all surprising that he would sell more and more saws into North America, despite the import laws in effect at that time. Even then, our saws were in great demand. You can see this in the fact that other manufacturers introduced similar systems to STIHL's models and sold them under their own name. Even though sales were considered good for that particular time, I don't think anyone imagined, not even my father, that the US would someday become our biggest market. Of course, in the turmoil of World War II, business with the United States came to a halt. However, in the 50s, we began importing into North America again and had tremendous success with a new saw, the Lightning, the first direct drive steel saw that could be operated by one person. This represented a milestone in the history of the company and was the beginning of positive developments for steel in the United States of America.
It was really interesting early on because when you told someone you worked for STIHL, the first question they would ask you is that Bethlehem or US. There was absolutely no awareness of the brand whatsoever. Our importer, which was Steel American in New Jersey, a gentleman by the name of Gordon Williams, was astute enough to assemble a real core of veterans from the power equipment chainsaw industry. And these were a group of very, very dedicated guys and very switched on, enthusiastic, and real pioneers, if you will, that went out in the bush, and when you heard a chainsaw running, you would stop the car and these fellows would get out. You'd find what the crew was running, which was generally in those days a competitive brand. And you would then try and convince them to try this new German chainsaw with a funny name. And you would actually have to put the unit into their hands and let them cut with it. And then they really became believers.
I liked the guy who was running the place, Gordon Williams. I never met him before he rented my place for a warehouse. And I did like the machine, and I did see a good future in it. He lived up in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and that was a high-class section of the area I lived in. And I thought he was rich, but he wasn't. He was a hard-working guy, and he was broke money-wise, and so was I. I had mortgage on a building. He had a mortgage on his house or whatever. And I saw him as a hard worker. And that's what I was. So I said, between the two of us and that machine, it's going to go someplace.
Gordon Williams was a positive thinker and a real winner. And he and I were friends from junior high school. And we each went our separate ways. And then he called me and wanted to know if I would like to join up and be in sales.
I can remember seeing the letter on the wall from Andreas Steel to the importer, Gordon Williams, in his country of the first steel chainsaws, where the first order was based on our agreement and handshake. I understand that you will agree to buy 26 STIHL chainsaws next year. And that's how it all started.
We established a lot of distributors who actually had just been large retailers. They would retail the product in the daytime with STIHL, they would repair it at night, they would have to be their own salesperson, and then of course their wives were involved as the bookkeepers and trying to maintain this kind of family atmosphere. But there was such a genuine enthusiasm and affection for this new product. It just created a lot of vitality, and people were committed to STIHL.
It was not the quickest road because we weren't the least expensive saw, and way back in '65 we only had 2 chainsaw models, and we were going against 2 very large, well-established companies in Homelight and McCullough, and there was a lot of resistance. Oh, it's made in Germany. Where do we get our parts? Parts are right there in New Jersey. You really? He said, well, and it took a while to build up that kind of rapport, but once a dealer or a distributor, I should say, took us on, it was something that, you know, we could then prove ourselves with.
I hit the road, and my wife did the office work, and when I'd sell a chainsaw, she would sit down to a portable typewriter that we had and beat out an invoice and ship it. And I'll never forget the first time I got an order for 6 saws. I thought, boy, this is tremendous. And I stopped at the nearest payphone, and I just couldn't wait to tell her, because we actually had a truck shipment then.
When we set up our operation initially, my partner and I put a dealership of our own in a neighboring town. It was hard to find dealers, so we knew one very good area, and we put our own shop in at that time just to get the saws started. Had a cutting contest, and to shorten the story, my partner was afraid that we were going to be beat. One of them, named the Lombard, was a very high revving saw. It just made it sounded like a nest of angry hornets. It would really rev up, and Robert thought, he said, partner, said, we're going to get our clock clean, so those people are going to embarrass us. They're going to take another saw and beat our STIHL. And I told him that noise didn't cut wood, torque did. And we won the day. All of our saws won the contest.
The product was so much better than our competition, and obviously we knew our competition because we had just been one, that it was so easy for us, particularly to sell against McCullough at the time. I mean, our product would start. When I sold McCullough's for 2 years, and I mean, first thing when you got home on Friday nights, you wanted to kick your dog because all you had done that week is listen to dealers complain about the product.
There were typical days that went right through to typical nights, because it seemed that there was no starting time or quitting time. We'd just keep right on going in a lot of cases. And we did a lot of demonstrating. A lot of times we'd take the customer out to a wood lot or logging operation, something of that type, and get the product in the hands of our intended customers. So.
One of my favorite examples of STIHL quality was the tolerance that STIHL holds between its piston and cylinder. And I would take the rings in front of a person, take the rings off the piston, put it in the cylinder, and with a string attached to the piston pin, ask them to pull the piston out. And they loved to hear that popping sound because none of the other competitors had that kind of tolerance that they kept as close as we did.
The decision was made to come to Virginia Beach, and it was predicated on several items. First of all, there was a very able and skilled workforce in the Virginia Beach area. Of course, an excellent deep water port, one of the finest on the East Coast. The city of Virginia Beach was very aggressive, providing good tax treatment, some attractive industrial revenue bonds, and we settled on nearly 50 acres, so there was the opportunity to expand, and that was possible as well.
We started in a little old tin building out by the old airport in Virginia Beach. I can remember it well. And my first desk was 2 empty oil drums and an old door we found somewhere with my secretary, Monica Mills now, parked on the end of it. And as I said, if I didn't have enough paperwork to keep things busy, Monica ended up with the typewriter tilting into her lap.
Because this was a flourishing, growing concern that we were moving into here, we not only had to try to pick up the sales and marketing end of the business, but also try to indoctrinate ourselves into the company, set up systems, procedures, and that type of thing. So we had to put in a lot of long hours to begin with, at least for the first few years. But it was very exciting.
The long hours we put in, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, and I don't think I'm the only one though. It wasn't like work, it was fun.
A lot of long hours, because we did everything. We did the price list. We proofread the price list. We typed it. We'd type a page and then proofread it with people that were around. Grab somebody as they were going out the door. Can you sit down and look over this? You'd get giddy. We would set up an assembly line in the conference room and would have papers stacked up, and we'd get the chairs and would roll down the table, picking up pages and putting them in binders to send out to the distributors. That was the price list.
We had a supervisor with us by the name of Bill Gilmore. He worked with STIHL for many years and went on to retire with the company. Bill did a lot of interesting things during his years with us, and was also a very helpful person. When we were still down at the old building, they had a little bit of a problem with some rats. So Bill said he would help us solve that problem. He poured gasoline down into this rat hole and proceeded to set it alight. Well, he didn't realize that they had other entrances and exits as well. So the next thing we know, these rats come flying out of these holes on fire and start running around in our pallets and everywhere else. So as you can imagine, it was quite a job getting all the fire out and the rats and things.
I didn't have any problems helping somebody in marketing department, marketing help, sales. It was nice. Would have made chainsaws if they needed us down there.
We left the Airport Industrial Park in December of 1977 because we had grown to over 100 employees, and we moved in that same December and actually held our Christmas party in the new headquarters, even though there was no carpeting, there was no walls, but everyone was just so anxious to move. And then ultimately in April of 1978, we conducted our grand opening.
What sticks out in my mind probably the clearest is the day we moved from Airport Industrial Park, where our first building was, to here. And remember very vividly Mr. STIHL breaking ground with one of our augers, 08S to be exact.
Lynn Haven Parkway was 2 lanes, 55 miles an hour, and when our assembly line would shut down at 3:30, the security guard would walk out of the middle of Lynn Haven Parkway with cement mixers going around him, whizzing past with his pathetic stop sign, wanting these people to stop so he could let the STIHL employees out. The man had more guts than I do.
The 10th anniversary was really a benchmark for STIHL. It pointed out that we had become really well established in this market in North America. The anniversary itself was a fantastic day and a great celebration, in spite of the fact then Lieutenant Governor Chuck Robb tore the seat of his pants out at our opening ceremonies, and Mrs. Petra Armour destroyed the guard gate by driving right through it a few minutes before the ceremony was about to commence.
The key to success is that we've always had a high standard, whether it was the production quality or the quality of the facility or even Christmas parties or picnics. There's always been high expectations, but the people have been motivated to achieve those things. And even, I think, we accomplished big things because we paid attention to the details of the small things. The small things were as important as the big ones.
One of the best feelings I've ever had is the year that we won the Quality Award, which is a competition with our German company. That was the best feeling I ever had. And I would say
that winning 9 out of the next 11 years just made it sweeter.
I always thought we'd be successful, but I guess my mind couldn't comprehend just how successful.
The growth here is phenomenal. From what we moved into in 79, 80, to where we're at today, I've seen more walls taken down and put up in different configurations and forms and adding on than I thought they could ever do in a building.
Today, we are building a much wider variety of sophisticated and technically sound products than ever before. We have an extremely dedicated and competent workforce which number over 1,000 strong. And while a lot of teams may say, wait till next year, I'll say, just watch us the next 25 years.